Okay, my name is Martin Woodward. Martin Woo at Microsoft.com. At Martin Woodward, if you want to shout some abuse at me on Twitter. I have remembered, hopefully I've switched my phone off, otherwise you'll hear it go ping, 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 ping during the talk. If you want to put yours on silent, that's awesome too. And then visualstudio.com whack DevOps is where I live. I work on the Visual Studio Team Services team. I live fairly locally, though. This is a view of my office this is a view from my office of my house. I live in sunny Northern Ireland. It does rain all the time in Ireland, so we get lots of rainbows, which is cool. It makes good photos, but yeah, there's some disadvantages to living out in the countryside, though. A few weeks ago, I was heading on stage, and literally as I headed on stage, my wife, my phone binged, and this was very strange because my phone's normally on silent, but my wife is in my Do Not Disturb group, she can get through. And she texted me just as I was walking up onto the stage, and sent me a picture that there was goats just eating in my garden right now, and I needed to sort it, and I was 5,000 miles away. So yeah, disadvantages of working in the countryside. I live in Northern Ireland, but my team are based in mostly Seattle, so I have to work a lot of Seattle hours, and then North Carolina is where a lot of other people are based, and an IDC. So India, Hyderabad, that's where the main development centers are for Visual Studio Team Services. And then we also have some people based around in EMEA and based other parts of the world, say in Australia and things like that. Who here uses Visual Studio Team Services? Cool. Who uses Team Foundation Server? Fantastic. While we're doing hands in the air then, who is using Team Foundation Version Control, TFVC, for source control? Okay. Who's using Git? And then how many Subversion, maybe? Okay, cool. That's actually any Mercurial people in the audience? Don't worry, you'll know when there's a Mercurial person in the audience. You can always find one because they'll tell you, okay? And then, let's see, who's already doing continuous builds, continuous integration? Who already does that? Okay, fantastic. Anybody here already continuously deploying into Azure or on-premise? A couple? Well, the people that have already got their hands up, this talk might be a little bit too basic for you. We're going to cover the beginnings, the basics of getting started with CI/CD. And then we're going to just show you some more, like some of the things that are possible, allow you to scale. But there are some talks elsewhere in the conference that delve into the individual, say, Azure functions and delving into, the individual really new stuff if you want to see that. But that's what we're going to do today. Okay. So you mostly know what Visual Studio Team Services is, but it's the DevOps collaboration platform for your team. So you've got work item tracking, you've got code being able to be stored there, and then you have build and release, and then finally with application insights you have monitoring. So this allows you to build, test, and deploy your application, have it in production, and keep iterating it in production very, very quickly. Today, we're going to cover CI/CD, how to set it up, pointing to Azure. We'll talk a little bit about hybrid scenarios, where maybe you are doing dev test in Azure, but you want to deploy on premises. We'll talk a little bit about that. And then that's kind of the sort of area that we'll cover, that we're going to touch on. So make sure you're in the right talk. If you're not, there's another talk starting in 10 minutes, so feel free. I won't be offended if you want to go to another talk. Don't worry about it. I'd rather you have a good use of your hour. The important thing to know, the people that aren't doing continuous delivery yet, if you're looking for proof that you should do it, it's not just about time to market and being able to do things in a repetitive, easily reproducible way that ensures you have high quality and that you're able to ship quickly. It also means you have happier development teams, which helps you with retention of developers and helps you with recruitment. Developers like to ship stuff, it turns out, as probably everybody here knows. The best thing about being a developer is seeing somebody using your software for real in production and then being able to get changes to your end users as quickly as possible, and being able to delight them with how quickly you can get things fixed. That's just so rewarding as an engineer. And actually, the 2017 Stack Overflow survey, one of the things they did was they actually found there's a data correlation between how often we ship and how happy people are. And so the more you ship, the more happy you are as an engineer. Now, what's actually interesting is that never shipping engineers are slightly happier than ones that ship a few times a year, which is, I actually can relate to that a lot, having been in a world where we didn't have CI/CD for a long, long time. I'm very old, so I recognize that. Because when you don't do something often, it's painful, and it's scary, and it's stressful, and it's always, shipping software, it's always the last moment when you have to do it, and if you don't do it a lot, then it's stressful and not fun, and is, horrible crunch time. So yeah, that makes sense. I quite like one of these jobs where I ship never. That'd be, don't know how I get paid to do that, but sign me up. Right. So let's just cover what I mean by continuous delivery. So there's continuous deployment, shipping into an environment often, but then continuous delivery, which is the whole pipeline of doing from your source code, build, test, packaging it up, deploying it into an environment, and then going through an environment approval. So, in this case, dev, staging, and production. So that's what I mean by continuous delivery, okay? Now, typically, source control-wise, Visual Studio Team Services obviously supports both Git and Team Foundation version control as it's able to host it, but you can talk to other source control providers. Build and test, nowadays, most people have kind of got build and test going, thankfully. So that's usually the CI step. And then you package, and then you deploy, and you set up a pipeline. So when I'm looking at continuous delivery pipelines, this is how I think about them. And these components are often quite interchangeable. So you can use, you can compose these things in sort of like Lego bricks to build your pipeline if you wish. For example, let's take an example which has totally got nothing to do with Visual Studio Team Services. Let's look at the options at which we can talk to Azure. So the first one, if you're deploying to Azure, you can do that with Team Foundation Services. So Team Foundation Server is the same code base as Visual Studio Team Services, VSTS. But TFS lives on premises, and VSTS lives in the cloud. But it's the same code. There's just a few if statements. So with TFS and your own build agents on premises, you can still deploy to Azure just fine. All this functionality works. With VSTS, so in the cloud, you get hosted agents. So we provide you build agents. We provide at the minute a Windows and a Linux build agent for you. So you're able to choose which operating system you want to build on. And you can do that using build agents we provide for you and we host for you. Or you can bring your own build agents as well. That build agent can live in our cloud, can live in Azure, can live in your own cloud, can live in a competitor cloud, AWS or GCP or whatever, or it could, it could be hosted on premises as well. And then you have other ways that people plug in and do CI/CD to Azure. TeamCity is a popular build server. Jenkins is obviously a very popular build server for the Java crowd, and we use it sometimes with some of our open source projects as well. And the Jenkins has a great plugin ecosystem, so we've gone in and we've contributed to the Jenkins open source project a load of Azure integrations to help it be able to publish to Azure very well. Because at the end of the day, that's what I mostly care about, well, what Microsoft cares about is you publishing to Azure, okay? What I care about is you checking in your source code. I don't really care where you check it in, just please check it in. It's 2017, we need source code checked in now. and I want a build happening, and I want it being deployed into production rapidly, and I want to help you do that. So we contribute a bunch of stuff to Jenkins, and we also integrate with Jenkins with VSTS, which I'll show you a little bit of. And then finally, you have some of these hosted providers that are just pure cloud. So AppVeyor is a great example for .NET, and then Travis CI or Heroku are fairly common in some of the open source, some of the other environments as well. Right. So let's take that example of our pipeline again. And in this example, let's take source control. We're going to do an open source project, and we're going to deploy it out to Azure. And we're going to use Octopus Deploy for this. Octopus Deploy, awesome open source based deployment pipeline you can use if you wish. So you could use Jenkins as your CI server. The package format is Octopack, which is basically like a fancy NuGet package, really. NuGet packages with extra metadata. So an Octopack package through Octopus Deploy and out into Azure. So totally doable. I'm not going to demo that because I'm going to do all about VSTS, obviously, because that's the team I know and that's the stuff I work on the best. But you can use those components. But then let's plug in some different components. So let's take a Docker, a source control stored in Git, and Git in VSTS, or Git in GitHub, or maybe Git in whatever hosting provider you want to use. The packaging deployment, the thing we're going to generate as part of our build is going to be a Docker container, and then we're going to send that to Kubernetes, which is actually, we're going to use Azure Container Services for that, but we'll use the Kubernetes interface to allow us to do that. And then we'll just use VSTS to do our builds and to do our pipeline. If I wanted, I could use, say, Jenkins to do my CI, my build, and VSTS to do my release pipeline. It's completely pluggable, but everything's in the box there in VSTS if you want to use it, if you haven't started. If you've already invested in something else, you can integrate it and use our release pipeline if you wish as well. Let's take another example just quickly. We want to, say, use VM scale sets. VM scale sets are a really cool way of taking a VHD image, and an image, a virtual machine image, and deploying it out to a whole raft of machines and provisioning a bunch of VMs, having dynamic scaling of those VMs and doing all that sort of thing. And rather than full containerization, which is obviously where you would go to if you could, because it has a lot of advantages, maybe you can't do that because your application, the way it's built, it's very hard to package as a container right now. So you can use VM scale sets to get you some of the benefits in terms of being able to scale, load, and be able to cost effectively host. You can do that through VSTS as well. What happens here is the thing to create the VHD image, we actually worked with HashiCorp on a thing called Packer, which is sort of the standard open source tool for generating images, virtual machine images, so whatever format you want. We made it able to support VHD images, contributed that to open source, and then integrated the open source into VSTS to allow you to call your Packer task within your VSTS pipeline. And that's how we do it. That's how we work as a company and as a team. We will enable the open source solution or the build system to go publish to Azure, and then we typically go plug it into VSTS as well, either through open source, working with a company, or if it's a commercial partner, working with those people as well. Does that make sense? Okay. Excuse me. The key part about Visual Studio Team Services, people get confused by the name Visual Studio Team Services, okay? They think it's all from Visual Studio, or it's just .NET, or something like that. And the thing I want to impress upon you is that we build any type of application, and I'll show you a few here. Anything. Java, Node, Python, but we also do a really, really good job with .NET Core, .NET Framework, just as you expect. But everything we're able to build. We have Linux and we have Windows build servers, and we can support any developer from their platform. We have command line tooling. We have, Bash consoles running in Azure that allow you to do all sorts of stuff. So it's any app, any developer, any platform. VSTS makes it really, really easy for you to get started with a CI/CD pipeline, but we don't make you get stuck. We allow you to be able to grow once you've created this easy pipeline. And that's very key. Friends don't let friends right-click publish, okay? Right-click publish is basically the same as pressing F6, taking those binaries from your bin folder and drag-dropping them over into production. It's not, but it's kind of similar. That's not how you should be deploying in production. That's great for standing something up. That's not a production-proof deployment pipeline. So what we try and do is make it super easy for you to get started and create a continuous delivery process, and then allow you to scale that up, allow you to move to more environments, allow you to extend your pipeline to make it more complicated, to adding tasks and things, allow you to call it as part of your code review processes and things like that as well. So that's the key. Lower the barrier to entry, make it super easy to get into Azure and into the cloud, and to be able to host continuously, both in Azure scenarios, but also hybrid scenarios and on-premises scenarios, and then allow you to grow with this. And obviously, it's the only enterprise class solution in the market that allows you to do both hosted and on-prem, that allows you to do deploy to the cloud, and is cloud agnostic as well. We make it super easy to deploy to Azure, obviously, that's who I work for, but we work with Amazon to provide the AWS tasks to allow you to publish to AWS from VSTS, and Google as well, the GCP tasks. These are all available, and we work with the companies that own those clouds to make sure that they are the ones supporting them and they make them first class. And then because we can do that, but we do obviously work in the Azure team, our support for the Azure Services is where we add support first, in terms of whenever we had a new Azure service, we add it into VSTS to be able to have a deployment pipeline from it very, very easily. Azure Functions are supported, Service Fabric is supported, all that sort of stuff. But yet, it's open source. All of the tasks in VSTS are open source and on GitHub. All of the common open source things you might work with are fully integrated into VSTS, as we'll show you. And you don't just have to use us. It's a completely pluggable pipeline, which I'll show you. Right. I'm bored of talking and showing slides. Let's go do some demos, okay? So the first thing we're going to talk about is deploying to an Azure App Service. Obviously, who's using Azure App Services already, like web apps and things like that? There you go, a few of you, okay. It's the most popular PaaS service, and it's growing very, very quickly. So let's go play with it. Okay. So there's a few different ways we can get started. Now, in this whole DevOps world, people talk a lot about the developer and how the developer are doing more ops, if the developers get woken up at night and they're on call and things, which is great. There's ops people in this too. We want teams that are made up of both developers and ops people. So what I wanted to quickly show you was the ops people who know the Azure portal very, very well. They don't need to wait on their engineering teams to go create a pipeline and CI/CD and set up servers and blah, blah, blah. The ops team themselves can set up CI/CD straight from the Azure portal if they want. So I went in here this morning and I created an Azure App Service, which has currently got nothing in it. So I just went and created one. And then if I go down to this continuous delivery tab here in the portal, there we go. Then I'm going to click on continuous delivery. I'm just going to make this a little bit bigger for you, sorry. There we go. And then I'm going to set it up. I'm going to configure my continuous delivery. And this is going to do a full, proper pipeline. This isn't just a equivalent of publish something. This is going to set up my pipeline for me. So let's tell it where I want my source code stored. I can choose my code repository. I have options right in the Azure portal for VSTS, obviously, But if I wanted to talk to GitHub, I have special integration with it. And then any other Git provider, we also support that. But let's talk to VSTS. Which team services account do you want to use? Well, here's where we learn that I have too many VSTS accounts. And then which project do I want to publish to? TechDays Netherlands. And then finally, which repository do I want to pick? I'm going to pick my TechDays Netherlands repository and my master branch. Click on OK for that. And then how do I want to do my continuous delivery? What type of application is it? You know, I've got a few options here. ASP.NET, .NET Core, Node, Python, whatever. Let's just have a quick look at what type of application it is. TechDays NL. TechDays NL is a Node application. Awesome. So let's go build a Node application, because we can. Because again, any app, any developer, any platform. And I'm just going to hit OK there for now. And then finally, let's just check, sorry. Yep. And then I'm going to, if I want to have load tests run after I've deployed, I could go switch that on. And then when I'm doing the deployment, if I wanted to have staging slots as well, I could just say yes or no and go switch that on. But I'm just going to take the defaults for now to keep it simple because it's easier to read. And that's going to go off, and that's going to go create my continuous delivery pipeline, and it's going to deploy my application into Azure for me. I didn't have to, do anything in VSTS land apart from know which Git repository I was deploying. It's doing all the work for me, and we'll dig in and we'll actually look and see what it does. But while that's working, I'm going to show you another easy way to get started. So that was ops people, very easy way to get started. Let's do a dev team. Let's make it really easy for the dev team to get started. So if I go into Visual Studio here, this time I've got a .NET Core application. I've connected it already to VSTS, so I've pushed my Git repository up to VSTS already. And then I can actually, rather than right-click Publish, bad, I can come in here and do right-click Configure Continuous Delivery. Good, okay? So friends let friends, right-click Configure Continuous Delivery. And this takes you through a very simple step to actually get this going. So what do you want to publish? ASP.NET Core. Which subscription do you want to use? I want to use that subscription. Which app service do you want to use? And you can configure you can configure it to point to an existing app, or what it's actually going to do here is go create a brand new app service for me. So this is just as easy as doing right-click publish. It's even going to create my Azure resources for me here. So yeah, let's give that a go. So I'm going to hit OK. And then it says, you get a nice warning. You always worry, especially from a tool like Visual Studio, and it says, warning, this might take several minutes. You know it's really going to take a long time if that's the case. So there we go. So I'm going to let that work. And then let's jump into VSTS and let's actually see what's going on behind the scenes. So the first thing I want to do is I'll show you, I've obviously got the code repository here. Currently I've got 3 Git repos. We've got TechDays NL, ASP.NET Core, which is the one I published from Visual Studio, and then this .NET FX app, which is an application, a .NET Framework application. So then if I go over into my builds, we should see by now, there's one build there, which is the build for the environment that I created, from my Azure portal, which was TechDays NL123, whatever. So, and then now we're also seeing another new build definition, which is this crazy long name that we just let Visual Studio auto-create for us. So that's the one that Visual Studio created. But if we go and we have a look at what we created from the Azure portal, we'll actually see it's already built and it succeeded. Awesome. In fact, let's just go check releases. Let's go see how the release is happening. So this is TechDays release. Well, actually, let's go click on that, and we'll see what's going on here. So click on logs. So it's currently in the middle of deploying this application, which is already built, and deploying it out into Azure, which is cool. I'll just let it get the console so you can see. It's very easy to just tell what's going on and get connected and things. There we go. So yeah, it's doing stuff, talking to the server, and awesome. Right, great. So let's go actually break down, and we'll go back into that build and see what happened. TechDays are now. There we go. So this is the one I created from the portal. I'm going to go in and I'm going to edit the build definition first of all. So here we see all it's doing is get the sources from VSTS. But notice, if I didn't want it to come from VSTS, I wanted it to come from GitHub or Bitbucket or Subversion, I can just go configure that in my build server. I don't have to use the source if I don't want to. It's completely pluggable. And then it's doing node stuff, and then it creates the zip file, which is the archive, which is going to get deployed, and then it publishes that zip file into the drop folder. So the output of the build is the Azure Web App zip file that it's going to go then deploy in the release. Super simple. And again, all that got created for me. But if I wanted to make this a bit more complicated, if I wanted to go do some other stuff, like, I don't know, let's see, we've got a bunch of things here. Hook into run a batch script, go run CMake, go build an Android application, go do Docker, what we got. There's just so much stuff here you could just go do. So we've got lots and lots and lots of different types of things, go run an Xcode build, whatever. You can do a bunch of stuff as part of that build process. You can make it much more complicated if you wish, if you want to make it a bit more simple. And these are the tasks that I've got in that are just the ones that are installed out of the box. If I want to, I can go to the marketplace and install additional tasks. So for example, if I want to go do some stuff with Docker, there we go, there's Octopus deploy. If I want to go do some stuff with Chef, I've got my Chef integration there. If I want to go use Amazon for some bizarre reason, there's the official Amazon tools from Amazon themselves. So, there's basically anything you want to do, there's usually a plugin already there. Look, published to the Google Play Store. Use ReSharper code quality. So much stuff is already built in. So go take a look, and it's very easy to go write your own extensions as well. Right. So that's the build, and then if I go back to my builds and I just look at the output, just so you see, quickly click on that one. So the build succeeded, ran for 64 seconds, and we can go have a look at the outputs from the build. We can see what changed in the build, and we can see why it changed. So we still get this end-to-end traceability, and it's not just within VSTS. If I go back into my Azure portal and look at my continuous delivery tab, I can see when this app service was deployed to straight from Azure, and I can tell which source version has been deployed, and so on and so forth. And I can click on those links, and I can go directly to VSTS from the portal and look at exactly what changed in that release, exactly what was different. So the ops people love that because they get to, they get the end-to-end insight and they get the end-to-end traceability. Right, back to builds. Let's go take a look at the release. The release for this is super, super simple, and both of them. So if we look at this one first, and I click edit, all we'll see it doing is taking the output of the drop, the output of the build, taking that, and then deploying it to one environment. Currently, it's called production. I actually think that's probably a bad name because the odds of you deploying to production first time round would be very slim. So let's rename that and make that a dev environment we're deploying to. And all it's doing is deploying to the Azure App Service, deploying to TechDays NL, blah, blah, blah. This is where you check a box if you want it to use delivery slots, so on. Now, great, that's all very good. What if I want to take my pipeline and make it a bit more complicated? For example, what if I wanted to add some additional artifacts that could trigger a release? Maybe I could have a build, or maybe I want a Jenkins build to trigger a release. Maybe I want a change to GitHub to trigger a release. All these things are possible if you want. You can also, you don't just have to release when things change. If you want to do like nightly builds or lunchtime builds or those sorts of things, you can do those as well. You can do scheduled releases, however you wish. So and that's to show you the environment. And what I can do here is I can create additional environments. So I can clone my dev environment, and now I've got a copy of dev, which we often know is called QA. You know, that's or maybe my staging environment. And by default, it's copied it, so it's got everything here. It's going to redeploy to this app service name. But what I could do is just quickly create a new QA app service, and maybe call it -QA or something, and then deploy to it instead in the deployment to QA. But if I go back to my pipeline, maybe you know, the deployment to dev, you want to happen automatically. Every single check-in, every single build deploys straight into the dev environment. But when you go to staging, maybe what you want to happen is actually have some people be approvers. Maybe I want to make it so that Martin, me, or maybe something like, here you go, let's make it important. Bill G, no, is he not in the system anymore? Brian, I've not added him. Yeah, it's just add me, Martin, there we go, because he's not in my team right now. I used to be able to add Bill Gates into my team really easily, which made a great demo. And then we added this new feature where it sent email invites when you do that sort of thing. And I got an email one day from Bill's technical assistant going, hey, did you mean to collaborate with Bill on this project? You know, I'm like, oh, nope, sorry. As long as he doesn't assign me bugs, I'm all right, I think, but that's fine. So I can make it so I have to approve this application. I have to manually approve this, and I can set a timeout of, you know, I only have 30 minutes to approve it or whatever, you know. You can do a bunch of different stuff. So let's just do that, and that's fine. So hit save. So we can come in and we can completely configure our pipelines. We can make them more complicated. We can add environments. Rather than having, say we've currently got dev and staging, maybe actually what I want is a dev environment. And then what I maybe want to do is also have a load test environment, say, and then I'm going to make that, load test environment there, hit, click on there, and I'm going to make it I'm going to make it happen as soon as dev happens. You know, you can do all those sorts of things. So, and you can completely build a very, very complex pipeline, and we'll show you some in a second. Let me zoom back out again. Great. Okay, that's that. Let's quickly show you as well the release I did. Let's show you the release I did from Visual Studio. So builds, leave this page. And I'm going to come in here, and that's the one I created in Visual Studio. Hit edit. It's currently deploying right now. And again, that's super simple. Oh, this was .NET Core, okay? So the build process for it was do a restore, do a build, do a test, do a publish, and then take your zip file and then get it ready and copy it over, ready to publish. And then in the release, I want to come in here and I want to, there it is, edit. And I come into my release and then just, again, it's super simple, just deploy to Azure App Service because that's a really easy task to do, okay? So super simple, all set up, all very easy, yet I can go in and configure them. Let's quickly do one from scratch, just so we go all these pages. So we'll go to builds, and we'll go create a brand new build, and we'll call it, you can start with a template, you know, what do we want to do? Well, lots of complicated stuff that I don't really understand. So I'm just going to go with a basic one of .NET. And I'm going to come in here, I'm going to say NetFX. Deploy, because this is the .NET framework-based ASP.NET application. Which agent do I want it to run on? I'm going to get it to run on the VS 2017 hosted agent, but if it was .NET Core or Node or whatever, I could get it to run on a Linux agent if I preferred. But because I'm doing .NET Framework, I want it to run using the Visual Studio 2017 bits. That's the one I'm going to pick. And then where do I want to get the sources from? ASP.NET, there you go, the .NET FX repo in VSTS, perfect. And that's it. All the other things it's set up by default, you know, build, test, publish the symbols, all that sort of stuff is already done by default. Great, well that looks good. So let's just do save and queue, and let's get that build going. So off it goes. And then while that build's running, I'm going to go quickly create the release for it. So I'm going to come in here, create a new release definition. I'm going to set my Azure App Service deployment, just to give me a quick template, which is a super simple one. So So let's call that dev, netfx, whatever we want to call it. And then I'm going to say, let's set the artifact to be the output of a build. Which build definition do I want to use? Netfx deploy. Sorry. The latest, yeah, that'll do. If I wanted to, I could get it to do latest from a specific branch with tags on enabled. So maybe I want it to deploy from the QA branch or the shipping branch or something like that. But I'm going to just say latest because hey, it's a demo. And then that's that. Let's go set up our actual deployment thing. So again, super easy. Let's go give it my Azure subscription. This time I'm going to say, let's just I'll use that VSTS community subscription. And which app service do I want to deploy to? Sorry. I'm going to deploy to netfx MW, hit save. Why am I editing my release definition? That's important that that's versioned. So that's that done. Oh, actually, I probably want to rename it. Sorry, don't I? netfx deploy. There we go. Great. That's good. Right, hit save. Yeah, whatever. And then go and we'll do create release. I'm hoping the build's finished and we'll see what happens. Right, fantastic. So you see, it's very, very easy. So you can either create one from the Azure portal, create one from Visual Studio, or create it from Visual Studio Team Services and just customize. Brilliant. Right, next. Virtual machines are awesome because VMs allow you to obviously deploy anything to anywhere. It's PaaS is good for the cloud. IaaS is great for taking lift and shift workloads. But when you're doing that, what you quite often want to do is group these machines together into what's called deployment groups. This allows you to just move bits easily. So maybe I want to move the web code to all of the machines in the web tier, and then move the database code to all the machines in the database tier. But I don't want to say these specific machines in my build scripts. For two reasons. One, I want my build to stay relatively unchanged between dev, QA, and prod, because that's the point. And then two, I might want to scale up my production environment and have it deploy to 20 machines instead of 8. And what I don't want to have to do is go change my deployment script. I would just want to say deploy to a deployment group for me. These deployment groups can be cloud or on-premises. You can have a group of machines in either, or both. You could have a deployment group which is actually a combination of on-premises machines and then cloud. What I see a lot of customers do is use deployment groups to dynamically provision QA environments in the cloud or smoke test environments in the cloud and then deploy to on-premises. So as part of the build process, let's go build a smoke test environment. We'll go to Azure, we'll provision one, we'll deploy our bits to it, we'll run our smoke tests, and then if it succeeds, we'll just completely delete that environment. Now we've got our load testing and smoke testing data from it, and then we'll still be deploying into production at the end of this. Great, so let's just go quickly show you. In the interest of time, I'm going to show you, here's one I've made earlier. So here we go. So where are we? There's a couple of things in here. So first one is, Fabricam. So this is with a Node application. So I'll quickly show you this, what it looks like. So this is where it starts easy. It was a very, very simple. This is now a little bit more of a complicated environment. So this has got Fabricam Node. So it's coming out of the Jenkins build server because we just can. And then I'm going to use a set of deployment groups. Sorry, I should show you how you define a deployment group first. Super easy. You define the group name, so what you want the group to be called. So let's call it Fabricam TechDays. You create the group, and then within the group, you add machines. And to add a machine, you just go run that bit of code, that simple bit of code you can all memorize. Luckily, you can copy-paste it very easily. You go run that on the machine, and that installs an agent on the machine itself that then talks to the deployment group and knows it's there. And this is why we can deploy to on-premises as well as the cloud really easily. And if you want the script for deploying deploying the agent on a RHEL box, you can. If you want the Ubuntu script, it's just there, okay? So super easy to do. And then here's, if I go back, here's a set of deployment groups I've already got configured. And you can see here's a bunch of VMs I have running in Azure, because that's easy for me, which goes and does the environments. Now you notice I've only got a couple there. I don't have that many. So what I can actually do within my build definition, if I look at my performance test build definition, what I'm doing here is, first of all, provision a bunch of Azure VMs for my web server and my API server. So I'm going to come in and I'm going to label them, and then actually go and deploy out to those. And when I deploy, I'm running on a deployment group. So deploy on all the machines that are in Fabricam node perf. So as part of your provisioning, you can easily install the agent as part of the machines because it's in the ARM templates within Azure. And then your deployment group, your machine is now magically in that deployment group. So we just deploy to any machine that's saying it's in the Fabricam node perf deployment group. Very, very easy. And then I run a bunch of load tests, and then at the minute I should be tearing the environment down, but I'm not actually looking at that. I just left it, so I've got to do that part. Great. While I'm here, let me show you some other quick, sort of more complicated build definitions. So we've got, that was one using deployment groups. What about actually building doing a web app on Linux? So if we come in here, again, super simple. We're just using we're just same sort of thing, just deploy. It's exactly the same as we had before. But if we go look at the builds for that, this is doing a web app on Linux build definition. If we go quickly look at that, then the web app on Linux here, again, because .NET Core is cross-platform, what I'm doing here is I'm actually doing getting the sources. I'm doing the doing the .NET Core stuff, and then here I'm creating a build image and doing that, and then configuring it out and doing Kubernetes. So that's me doing the build via Docker and then deploying it out. Again, super simple, super easy. Right, but the point I'm trying to make though is that you can start with, you can use right-click continuously, configure continuous delivery. You can go to the Azure portal, you can go into VSTS, just get started, just do a CI/CD process, and then go create another environment, and then make it more complicated, run more unit tests, run pre-testing. Start small. Don't feel you have to have this amazing environment all fully automated to begin with. Just get a dev environment continuously deployed and then build from there, baby steps. So I've talked about web apps on Linux, ACS. Yeah, so ACS is super easy as well. It's just, we'd say build a container and then you deploy it out to Azure. So let me just quickly show you that one. So if we go to releases, web app on Linux, here you go. Let me show you this one, actually. So this is pretty cool. So this is how we do canary builds. So this is where we're dynamically provisioning. We're triggering a bunch of builds based on 3 different types of builds will trigger release. And then we have a QA and a perf test environment that we have. And then what we do is we deploy to the canary test environment. Well, let me show you this because this bit's magic. I just love this. When we deploy to the canary test environment, we deploy it, but then we configure the load balancer to send 50% of the traffic over to it. So that way we're sending 50% of our traffic over into our canary instance to see if we broke it or not. And then if it worked, then we'll go switch everything else and move that all out. Sorry, that wasn't one I meant to show you, but I like that one. That's a cool one. There you go, Docker. So this is how you just do a simple Docker deployment, which is very easy. Output of my Docker thing. And then I just go and I talk to, using kubectl, I just go and I talk to the Azure Container Registry as if it was any other Docker server. And again, we've got all the tasks that are just built in that just do that. So super easy, but we've got all this documented and you can go look up exactly how to do it when you want to get there, but it's possible. Right, let's get wrapped up. So talked a bit about VM scale sets. We talked a bit about things like Azure Service Fabric. It's all possible. All the latest Azure goodness you can definitely do. Yeah, that was it. And then I have 30 seconds left. Let's quickly show you the Packer thing, if I can. So, VM scale sets. So again, it's just super easy. You know, I'm just gonna. You come in here, look at the image, look at the tasks, and all this is doing is create the VM scale set, build a VHD that contains the output of your source code along with your image, and then deploy it. So, you know, that makes it really, really easy to do. Start easy, grow big. Okay. Right. Anyone's got any questions? I'll be here for a little while, and then I'll be hanging around outside. But please, please, please take one thing away from this. Go do continuous delivery. It's really easy to get started, but know that if you do it using VSTS and with a pipeline, if you haven't got anything already, you can just go get started. It'll be fine. And then if you've already got things in place, don't feel like you have to rip those out and throw them away. You can still use VSTS to help you with your deployment part. You don't have to rip anything else out to begin with. Thank you very much for your time.